Emma Martinez had always believed that love stories were for other people. At 28, she had built a successful career as a wildlife photographer, traveling to remote corners of the world to capture nature's most breathtaking moments. Her camera was her companion, and solitude was her comfort zone. She had convinced herself that she didn't need anyone else to feel complete. That belief crumbled on a rainy Tuesday morning in the small mountain town of Cedar Falls, Colorado. Emma had come to photograph the famous golden eagles that nested in the nearby cliffs, but the weather had other plans. Rain pelted her tent for 3 days straight, making it impossible to venture out with her expensive equipment. On the third morning, desperate for coffee and human conversation, she trudged through the muddy streets to the only cafe in town. The Rusty Spoon was a cozy place with mismatched furniture and the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls wafting through the air. Emma ordered her usual black coffee and found a corner table where she could review her photos on her laptop. That's when she saw him. David Chun was behind the counter, his dark hair slightly messy from the morning rush, wearing a flour-dusted apron over a simple blue sweater. He moved with quiet confidence as he prepared drinks, occasionally sharing a laugh with regular customers who clearly adored him. There was something different about him, a gentleness in his eyes that made Emma's heart skip in a way she'd never experienced. When he brought her coffee to the table, their fingers brushed for just a moment. "You're not from around here," he said, his voice warm and curious rather than intrusive. "Is it that obvious?" Emma replied, surprised by how easily she smiled at this stranger. "Well, you're the first person to order coffee without asking about our famous maple walnut scones," David chuckled. "I'm David, by the way. I own this place with my sister." "Emma," she replied, feeling oddly nervous. "And I suppose I should try one of those famous scones." David's entire face lit up. "Coming right up. Fair warning, though, they're addictive. People have been known to extend their stays in Cedar Falls just for these scones." As David returned to the counter, Emma found herself watching him work. The way he carefully selected the best scone, how he warmed it just slightly, and added a small pat of butter on the side. When he brought it back, he lingered for a moment. "So what brings you to our little town?" he asked, genuinely interested. "I'm a photographer. I came for the eagles, but Mother Nature had different plans." Emma gestured toward the rain-streaked windows. "The eagles are incredible," David said, his eyes brightening. "I've lived here my whole life, and I still get excited every time I see them. There's this one spot about 15 minutes up the mountain trail where you can get the most amazing view of their nests. Most tourists never find it." Emma felt something flutter in her chest. Would you maybe show me? When the weather clears up?" David paused, and for a moment Emma worried she'd been too forward. But then he smiled, and it was like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. "I'd love to. Actually, I was planning to close early tomorrow if the rain stops. The forecast says it should clear by afternoon." For the rest of the morning, Emma found excuses to linger in the cafe. She ordered another coffee, then a sandwich, then asked David about the local hiking trails. Each conversation felt natural and easy, like talking to an old friend. David would steal moments between serving other customers to continue their chat, and Emma noticed how his presence made everything feel warmer and brighter. "You know," David said during a quiet moment, "I've been running this cafe for 5 years, and I've met hundreds of travelers. But you're the first one who's made me wish the weather would stay bad just a little longer." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "Why's that?" "Because then, you might stay a little longer too." The simple honesty in his words took Emma's breath away. She had always prided herself on being independent, on not needing anyone. But sitting in this cozy cafe, talking to this kind, genuine man, she realized that maybe she had been missing something important all along. As the day wore on, Emma learned that David had taken over the cafe after their parents passed away in a car accident 3 years earlier. He had given up his job as a teacher in Denver to move back home and take care of his younger sister, Sarah, who was finishing high school. He spoke about his family with such love and devotion that Emma felt her heart expanding in ways she didn't know were possible. "What about you?" David asked as the afternoon light began to fade. "What made you fall in love with photography?" Emma found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone, about growing up feeling invisible in a house full of accomplished siblings, about finding her voice through the lens of a camera, about the peace she found in wild places where human drama couldn't reach her. "That sounds lonely," David said gently. "I thought I preferred it that way," Emma admitted, surprised by her own honesty. "And now?" Emma looked into David's warm brown eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. like a door opening in a room she'd kept locked for years. Now I'm not so sure. When the cafe officially closed at 6, David asked if Emma would like to stay for dinner. His sister Sarah was working a shift at the local grocery store, and he had planned to make his grandmother's famous beef stew. I should probably get back to my campsite, Emma said, though every part of her wanted to stay. The forecast shows more rain tonight, David said. Your tent is going to be pretty miserable. I have a guest room upstairs, nothing fancy, but it's warm and dry. Sarah, and I would feel terrible if you caught pneumonia on our watch. Emma hesitated. She had strict rules about getting too close to people, especially people she was attracted to. But something about David felt different. Safe. Real. Okay, she heard herself saying. But I'm paying for the room. Absolutely not, David laughed. This is Cedar Falls hospitality. Besides, you're doing me a favor. I hate eating alone. As David cooked, Emma found herself helping without being asked. She chopped vegetables while he told her funny stories about life in a small town. She set the table while he shared his dreams of maybe expanding the cafe, of creating a place where travelers and locals could connect over good food and genuine conversation. You're different from what I expected, Emma said as they sat down to eat. What did you expect? I don't know. Most guys I meet are either trying to impress me with how adventurous they are, or they're intimidated by my lifestyle. You're just yourself. David smiled. My mom used to say that the right person will love you not despite who you are, but because of who you are. I figure if being myself isn't good enough, then it wasn't meant to be anyway. That simple wisdom hit Emma like a physical blow. She had spent so many years trying to be strong enough, independent enough, accomplished enough to earn love. The idea that someone might simply love her for being exactly who she was felt revolutionary. As the evening stretched on, Emma found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't in years. She laughed at David's terrible jokes, shared her own stories, and felt the walls she had built around her heart beginning to crack. When Sarah came home from work, she immediately welcomed Emma like an old friend. The three of them played cards until late, and Emma was struck by the easy warmth between the siblings, the way they teased each other with obvious affection. I like her, Sarah whispered to David when Emma excused herself to use the bathroom, not realizing Emma could hear from the hallway. Me too, David replied softly. More than I probably should after just one day. Emma stood frozen in the hallway, her heart racing. She had come to Cedar Falls to photograph eagles, but instead she had found something she didn't even know she was looking for. As she lay in the guest bed that night, listening to the rain on the roof and the quiet sounds of the house settling around her, Emma realized that for the first time in her adult life, she didn't want to run away. She wanted to stay, to see what might grow between her and this remarkable man who had appeared in her life like magic. But even as that thought filled her with warmth, a cold fear crept in around the edges. Emma's life was built around leaving. She had no idea how to stay. And tomorrow, when the rain stopped, she would have to decide whether she was brave enough to try. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the sound of birds singing outside her window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. And then, the memories of the previous day came flooding back. David's warm smile, the easy conversation, the way her heart had raced when their hands touched. She had never believed in love at first sight, but something profound had shifted inside her yesterday. Downstairs, she found David already in the kitchen, humming softly as he prepared what looked like the most elaborate breakfast she had ever seen. Pancakes, fresh fruit, coffee that smelled like heaven, and, yes, those famous maple walnut scones. Good morning, he said, his face lighting up when he saw her. I wasn't sure what you liked for breakfast, so I made a little bit of everything. You didn't have to do all this, Emma protested, though she was secretly thrilled by the gesture. I wanted to, David said simply. Besides, we're going eagle watching today, remember? You'll need energy for the hike. Emma had forgotten about their plans in the emotional whirlwind of the previous evening. Now, looking at David's eager expression, she felt a mix of excitement and terror. She was about to spend an entire day alone with this man who was making her question everything she thought she knew about herself. The mountain trail David led her to was unlike anything Emma had experienced. Most of the locations she photographed for work were accessible only after days of difficult hiking, but this path wound gently through pine forests and wildflower meadows, perfect for conversation rather than endurance. Tell me about your family, David said as they walked. You mentioned siblings yesterday. Emma found herself opening up in ways that surprised her. She told him about her 3 older brothers, all successful doctors, and lawyers who had never understood her artistic pursuits, about parents who loved her but had never quite known what to do with a daughter who preferred camping to country clubs. They're not bad people, Emma explained. They just live in a different world than I do. I think I've always felt like I was speaking a different language. What language do you speak? David asked. Emma thought about it. The language of quiet moments, of sunsets that make you forget to breathe, of the way light changes everything it touches. David stopped walking and turned to look at her. That's beautiful, he said quietly. And it's not a foreign language to me. The sincerity in his voice made Emma's chest tighten with emotion. She had never met anyone who understood that part of her so completely. When they reached the eagle viewing spot, Emma was amazed. David had been right. It was a perfectly positioned clearing that offered an unobstructed view of the cliff faces where the golden eagles nested. She immediately began setting up her camera equipment, falling into the focused state that had always been her refuge. There, David whispered, pointing to a magnificent eagle soaring near the cliffs. She's one of the mothers. If you watch carefully, you can see her bring food back to the nest. Emma followed his gaze and began shooting, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of photography. But something was different this time. Usually when she worked, the rest of the world disappeared. Today, she was acutely aware of David sitting quietly beside her, occasionally pointing out details she might have missed, but mostly just being present in a way that felt supportive rather than intrusive. You're really talented, David said softly as Emma paused to review her shots. These are incredible. Thanks, Emma replied, surprised by how much his opinion mattered to her. Most people get bored watching me work. I could watch you work forever, David said, and then immediately blushed. Sorry, that sounded less intense in my head. Emma laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I didn't mind it. They spent hours at the viewing spot, and Emma got some of the best shots of her career. But, more importantly, she experienced something she had never felt while working, the joy of sharing her passion with someone who genuinely appreciated it. Can I ask you something? David said as they prepared to head back down the trail. Of course. What happens after this? I mean, when you finish your photo series here. Emma's stomach dropped. In all the magic of the past day and a half, she had managed to forget that her life was elsewhere, that she had assignments waiting, deadlines to meet, a whole existence that didn't include this mountain town or this wonderful man. I have to go to Alaska next, she said quietly. There's a magazine spread on Arctic wildlife that I've been contracted for. David nodded, and Emma could see him trying to hide his disappointment. When? 3 days. They walked in silence for a while, both lost in thought. Emma felt like she was being torn in two. Part of her wanted to cancel everything and stay in Cedar Falls forever. But another part, the part that had guided her for years, whispered that this was exactly why she didn't do relationships. They complicated everything. They made her weak. I have an idea, David said suddenly. What if I came with you? Emma stopped walking. What? To Alaska? I could close the cafe for a few weeks. Sarah's 18 now. She could handle things here. I've never seen the Arctic, and He trailed off, looking uncertain. David, you can't just leave your life because of someone you met 2 days ago, Emma said, though her heart was racing at the possibility. Why not? David asked. Emma, I've lived in the same town my whole life. I've dated 3 women, all of whom left because they said I was too boring, too content with small-town life. But you're different. You make me want to see the world through your eyes. You make me want to be brave. Emma felt tears pricking her eyes. It's not that simple. My lifestyle isn't easy. I camp in places where the nearest civilization is hundreds of miles away. I work 16-hour days in weather that can kill you. I'm gone for months at a time. I know, David said. And I'm not saying I could do it long term. But maybe I could try? Maybe we could figure out a way to make both our worlds work. Emma wanted to say yes more than she had ever wanted anything. But fear held her back. Fear of disappointing him when he realized how difficult her life really was. Fear of disappointing herself if she let someone in, and they left like everyone else eventually did. I need time to think, she said finally. David nodded, though she could see the hurt in his eyes. Of course. I'm sorry if I'm moving too fast. It's just that I've never felt anything like this before. Neither have I, Emma admitted. That's what scares me. That evening, they had dinner with Sarah again, but the easy atmosphere from the night before was strained. Emma could feel David watching her, hoping for some sign that she might be willing to take a chance on them. Sarah, who was clearly rooting for them, kept trying to steer the conversation toward romantic topics. You should see David when he's really happy, Sarah told Emma. He gets this smile that could power the whole town. He's been wearing that smile since yesterday. Emma's heart ached. She wanted to be the person who could keep that smile on David's face. But what if she wasn't? What if she tried to change her life and failed? What if she asked him to change his life and he ended up resenting her for it? After Sarah went to bed, Emma and David sat on the front porch of the cafe, watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. I've been thinking about what you said, Emma began carefully. About coming to Alaska. David tensed beside her. And I think you should know what you'd be getting into. Last month I spent 3 weeks in Patagonia. I got caught in a storm that lasted 4 days. I ran out of food and had to eat energy bars and melted snow. I got altitude sickness so bad I couldn't keep anything down for 2 days. And that was a good assignment. David was quiet for a long moment. Did you get the shots you needed? Yes, but, and was it worth it? The hardship, I mean. Did you come away with something that mattered to you? Emma thought about the incredible photos she had captured of condors in flight, the way the light had looked breaking through the storm clouds over the mountains. Yes, she said softly. Then, I want to try, David said simply. Emma, I've been safe my whole life. I've done what was expected, taken care of everyone else, never taken a real risk. But meeting you feels like waking up after years of sleepwalking. I don't want to go back to sleep. Emma felt something crack open inside her chest. What if it doesn't work? What if you hate it? What if I'm not worth turning your life upside down for? David turned to face her fully. What if it does work? What if I love it? What if we're both worth taking a chance on? In that moment, looking into David's hopeful, determined face, Emma realized that her biggest fear wasn't that David would leave her. Her biggest fear was that she would sabotage something beautiful because she was too afraid to believe she deserved it. Okay, she whispered. Okay, come to Alaska with me. But I have conditions. David's face broke into that power the whole town smile Sarah had mentioned. Name them. First, you buy your own gear. I won't be responsible if you freeze to death because you brought the wrong sleeping bag. Second, we take this one assignment at a time. If you hate it, you come home, no hard feelings. And third, Emma paused, gathering her courage. Third, you have to promise to tell me the truth about how you're feeling, even if you think it might hurt my feelings. I can't handle any more people in my life who pretend everything is fine when it's not. Deal, David said without hesitation. Then, more softly, can I add one condition of my own? What? You have to promise to let me take care of you sometimes. I know you're used to doing everything alone, but I want to be your partner, not just your travel companion. That means sharing the hard stuff as well as the beautiful stuff. Emma felt tears well up in her eyes. No one had ever asked to take care of her before. No one had ever seen her independence as something that could coexist with partnership rather than something that prevented it. Deal, she whispered. David reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. So, when do we leave for Alaska? Day after tomorrow, Emma said. Are you sure you can get everything arranged that quickly? David laughed. Emma, I've been ready for an adventure my whole life. I just didn't know it until I met you. As they sat holding hands under the stars, Emma felt something she had never experienced before. The thrilling, terrifying sensation of falling in love with someone who was falling right back. For the first time in her life, she wasn't planning her escape route. She was planning a future point. 3 months later, Emma stood at the edge of a frozen lake in northern Alaska, watching David attempt to set up their tent for the 4th time. His cheeks were red from the cold, his breath came out in white puffs, and he was muttering what sounded like very creative curse words under his breath. But he was smiling. Need help? Emma called out, trying not to laugh. I've got this, David replied, though the tent promptly collapsed again. Okay, I don't have this, but I'm learning. Emma walked over and quickly fixed the tent setup, showing David where he had gone wrong. It was a routine they had developed over the past 3 months of traveling together. David would enthusiastically attempt something new. Emma would patiently teach him, and somehow they both ended up laughing. You know, David said as they finally got the tent properly secured. 3 months ago, I thought camping was staying at a hotel without room service. And now? Emma asked, settling beside him as they watched the aurora borealis begin to dance across the sky. Now I think this might be the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, David said. But he was looking at her, not the northern lights. Emma felt her heart skip, the way it had been doing constantly since they started this adventure together. The past 3 months had been a revelation. She had expected David to struggle with her lifestyle, to complain about the discomfort, the long days, the isolation. Instead, he had thrown himself into every challenge with enthusiasm and humor that made even the difficult moments feel like adventures. More surprisingly, having him there had made her work better, not worse. David had an instinct for wildlife behavior that complemented her technical skills perfectly. He would spot movement she missed, suggest angles that captured not just the animals, but their personalities. And on the hard days, when equipment failed or weather turned dangerous, having someone who believed in her completely made her feel capable of anything. "I have something to tell you," Emma said, her heart racing with nervous excitement. "Good something or bad something?" David asked, though his voice was relaxed. "Good something, I hope." Emma took a deep breath. "I got a call from my agent yesterday. National Geographic wants to offer me a staff position. It would mean less travel, more stability. I could actually have a home base for the first time in years." David's eyes widened. "Emma, that's incredible. That's like the pinnacle for wildlife photographers, isn't it?" "It is," Emma said. "But here's the thing. The position is based in Washington, D.C. It would mean leaving Colorado. It would mean asking you to leave Cedar Falls permanently, not just for adventures." David was quiet for a long moment, and Emma's stomach clenched with fear. This was it. The moment she found out if what they had been building was strong enough to survive real life. "Can I ask you something?" David said finally. "Of course. Do you want the job? Not because of me, not because of what it might mean for us. Do you want it for you?" Emma had been asking herself the same question for the past 24 hours. "Yes," she said honestly. "I love the field work, but I'm tired of never having a home. I'm tired of missing Christmas and birthdays and all the small moments that make up a life. I want both, the adventure and the stability." David smiled, and Emma saw something in his eyes that took her breath away. It was pride, pure and simple. "Then, congratulations, soon-to-be National Geographic staff photographer Emma Martinez." "Just like that?" Emma asked, hardly believing it. "You'd be willing to move across the country, leave everything you've built?" David reached for her hands, pulling off their gloves so they were skin to skin despite the cold. "Emma, do you remember what you asked me 3 months ago? You asked me to tell you the truth about how I'm feeling, even if I thought it might hurt." "I remember. The truth is that these 3 months with you have been the best of my life. Not just because of the places we've seen or the things we've done, but because I've discovered who I am when I'm with you. I'm braver, more curious, more alive. Cedar Falls was my home because it was safe and familiar, but you've become my home because you're where I belong." Emma felt tears freezing on her cheeks. "What about Sarah? What about the cafe?" "Sarah is starting college in the spring. She's been wanting to go to art school in Portland, but she's been staying in Cedar Falls because she didn't want to leave me alone. This would be perfect for both of us." "And the cafe?" David paused, looking thoughtful. "I've been thinking about that. What if instead of selling it, we turned it into something new? A base camp for photographers and writers and artists who want to experience the mountains? We could run it together when we're not traveling." Emma stared at him, amazed by how quickly he had thought through all the practical details. "You'd really want to do that?" "I'd want to do anything if it meant building a life with you," David said simply. Emma threw her arms around him, nearly knocking them both over. "I love you," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I love you so much it scares me." "I love you too," David replied, holding her tight. "And you don't have to be scared anymore. We're in this together." As they held each other under the vast Arctic sky, Emma realized that everything she had been afraid of, commitment, vulnerability, depending on another person, had turned out to be the very things that made her feel most free. With David, she didn't have to choose between love and adventure. She could have both. The next morning, Emma called her agent and accepted the National Geographic position. That afternoon, David called Sarah to tell her about their plans. His sister's reaction was everything Emma had hoped for. Finally, Sarah's voice crackled through the satellite phone. "I've been waiting for David to find someone who would love him enough to let him grow. And, Emma, I've been hoping someone would love him enough to want to build something with him instead of just passing through." "So you're okay with us moving away?" David asked. "I'm more than okay," Sarah laughed. "I'm excited. This means I can go to art school without feeling guilty, and it means you get to keep being happy. Plus, Portland isn't that far from DC. I can visit, and you can show me all the cool places you've been photographing." After they hung up, Emma and David spent the rest of the day planning their future. They would finish the Alaska assignment, spend the holidays in Cedar Falls with Sarah, and then move to DC in the new year. David would set up the artist retreat in Cedar Falls as a summer business, and spend the rest of the year supporting Emma's work and developing his own photography skills. "I have one more confession," David said as they packed up their campsite the next morning. "What now?" Emma asked, though she was smiling. I may have already been looking at engagement rings online. Emma dropped the sleeping bag she was rolling up. Seriously? David's cheeks turned red, though Emma wasn't sure if it was from the cold or embarrassment. I know it's crazy. I know we've only been together for 3 months. But, Emma, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I don't need to date you for years to know that I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. Emma felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst. 6 months ago, if someone had told her she would be standing in the Alaskan wilderness, ready to plan a wedding with a man she'd met in a small-town cafe, she would have laughed. Now, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Can I see the rings? She asked. David pulled out his phone and showed her a simple, elegant setting with a stone that caught the light like captured starfire. I was thinking something that could survive adventures, but still be beautiful. Like you. It's perfect, Emma whispered. But I have one request. Anything. Ask me properly. With the northern lights and the mountains and all the beauty we've found together. David's entire face lit up. He dropped to one knee right there in the snow, pulling out a small box that Emma realized he must have been carrying for weeks. Emma Martinez, he said, his voice strong and clear in the crisp morning air. You taught me that love doesn't mean giving up who you are. It means becoming more of who you're meant to be. Will you marry me, and let me spend the rest of my life being brave enough to deserve your love? Yes, Emma said, pulling him up for a kiss that tasted like snow and promise and forever. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. As David slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma looked around at the pristine wilderness that stretched endlessly in every direction. 3 months ago, she had thought this kind of landscape represented freedom because it was empty of human complications. Now she realized that true freedom wasn't about being alone in beautiful places. It was about being with the right person, ready to explore all the beautiful places the world had to offer, together. So what's our next adventure? David asked, holding her close. Emma smiled, thinking about all the assignments waiting for her, all the places they had yet to explore, all the life they were about to build together. Everything, she said. Our next adventure is everything. 2 years after their engagement in Alaska, Emma stood in the bathroom of their Washington, D.C. apartment, staring at a pregnancy test with shaking hands. 2 pink lines stared back at her, clear and unmistakable. She was pregnant. Her first emotion wasn't joy or fear. It was complete and utter confusion. This wasn't part of the plan. She and David had talked about children, of course, but always in the abstract future. After they were more established, after they had traveled to all the places on their list, after they felt ready. She was supposed to leave for Madagascar in 3 weeks for a 3-month assignment documenting lemur populations. David was supposed to join her for the last month. They had plane tickets, equipment shipped, contacts arranged. Emma. David's voice came through the bathroom door. You okay in there? Emma realized she had been silent for 10 minutes. She opened the door to find David waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a concerned expression that immediately shifted to alarm when he saw her face. What's wrong? He asked, setting down the mugs and reaching for her hands. Emma wordlessly handed him the pregnancy test. David stared at it for a long moment, his expression cycling through surprise, confusion, and, finally, settling on something that looked like wonder. We're having a baby? Apparently, Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. David set the test down gently and pulled Emma into his arms. How are you feeling about it? Terrified, Emma admitted. I don't know how to be a mother, David. I don't know how to be responsible for someone else's life. I've never even kept a houseplant alive for more than 6 months. David laughed softly, stroking her hair. You've kept me alive through 3 different wilderness expeditions. I think you're more capable than you realize. That's different, Emma protested. You're an adult who can make his own decisions. A baby needs constant care, stability, routine. Everything I'm terrible at. Says the woman who just received the Photographer of the Year award from National Geographic, David pointed out. Emma, you're one of the most capable people I know. You just express it differently than other people. Emma pulled back to look at him. You're not freaking out about this? Honestly, I'm a little freaked out, David admitted. But I'm also excited. We've talked about wanting a family eventually. Maybe eventually is just now instead of later. What about Madagascar? Emma asked. What about all our plans? David was quiet for a moment, and Emma could practically see him thinking through the implications. We'll figure it out, he said finally. Maybe you can do some assignments closer to home for a while. Maybe we adjust our timeline. Maybe we discover that traveling with a baby is actually possible. You don't understand, Emma said, feeling panic rising in her chest. Everything changes now. Everything. The spontaneous trips, the dangerous assignments, the freedom to pick up and go wherever the work takes us. All of that ends. Does it? David asked. Or does it just change? Emma, some of the most amazing photographers I follow online are parents who brought their kids on adventures. Different adventures, maybe, but still incredible ones. Emma wanted to believe him, but the fear was overwhelming. She had built her entire identity around being independent, mobile, unencumbered. The idea of being responsible for a tiny human being felt like being asked to perform surgery when she had never even taken a first aid class. Over the next few weeks, Emma struggled with accepting her new reality. She threw herself into research, reading everything she could about pregnancy, parenting, and how other professional women had managed to balance careers with motherhood. The more she read, the more inadequate she felt. David, meanwhile, seemed to bloom with excitement. He started converting their spare room into a nursery, reading pregnancy books out loud to her at night, and talking to her belly even though she was barely 8 weeks along. You know, he said one evening as they lay in bed, I've been thinking about names. David, it's the size of a blueberry right now, Emma said. We have time. I know, but I like thinking about it. What if we named them after places that are important to us? Like Cedar, for where we met, or Aurora, for our engagement. Despite her anxiety, Emma felt her heart warm. Those are beautiful names. I want this baby to grow up knowing they were loved before they were even born, David said softly. I want them to know that their parents found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. What if I'm terrible at it? Emma whispered. What if I can't love them enough? What if I resent them for changing everything? David turned to face her fully. Emma, do you remember when I first met you? You were so convinced that you didn't need anyone, that you were better off alone. But you weren't running away from love. You were just scared of it. This feels the same to me. How do you mean? I think you're not afraid of being a bad mother. I think you're afraid of being a good one. Because if you're a good mother, if you love this baby the way I know you will, then your whole idea of yourself as someone who can't be tied down will have to change. And change is scary, even when it's good. Emma stared at him, realizing he was absolutely right. She wasn't afraid of failing at motherhood. She was afraid of succeeding at it so completely that she would become someone she didn't recognize. I've never thought of myself as the nurturing type, Emma said. Really? David asked. Because I've watched you spend hours perfectly still, waiting for the perfect shot so you don't disturb a nesting bird. I've seen you carry injured animals to safety. I've watched you take care of me when I had food poisoning in Brazil, and you were gentler and more patient than any nurse. You're incredibly nurturing. You just don't realize it because you express it through action instead of words. Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. I canceled Madagascar, she said quietly. You what? Yesterday. I called and told them I couldn't make it. I was too scared to travel while pregnant, too scared something would go wrong. Emma wiped her eyes. I've never canceled an assignment for anything. Ever. David pulled her close. That doesn't make you weak, Em. That makes you a mother already. You're putting our baby's safety first, even when it costs you something you want. I don't know how to do this, Emma whispered. None of us do, David replied. But we'll figure it out together, just like we figured out everything else. A month later, Emma was surprised to find herself actually excited about the pregnancy. Her morning sickness had passed, and she was starting to show just enough that David couldn't resist putting his hand on her belly every time they were close to each other. I have an idea, David said one morning over breakfast. What if we did a pregnancy photo series? Not cheesy studio shots, but real documentary-style photos of this whole experience? We could capture the places where this baby starts to become real to us. Emma considered it. That's actually not a terrible idea. We could do it as a long-term project, photograph the whole journey from pregnancy through the first year. Exactly. And think about it. No one else could tell this story the way you could. You have access to your own experience in a way that would be impossible for another photographer. Emma felt a familiar flutter of excitement, the feeling she got when she sensed a great story waiting to be told. We could document how identity changes during pregnancy, how relationship dynamics shift, how the world looks different when you're about to become responsible for someone else. Now you're talking, David grinned. This could be your most powerful work yet. Emma realized he was right. Instead of seeing the pregnancy as an end to her career, what if she saw it as the beginning of a new chapter? A chance to explore subjects she had never considered before, to bring her unique perspective to experiences that were common but rarely documented with artistic honesty? Okay, she said, feeling something like her old confidence returning. Let's do it. But we do it right. No sugarcoating, no perfect moments that don't exist. If we're going to document this, we tell the whole truth. Even the parts where you cry because you can't fit into any of your clothes. David teased. Especially those parts, Emma said firmly. The real story is always more interesting than the pretty story. As they began planning their pregnancy photo project, Emma realized that David had been right all along. Nothing was ending. Everything was just beginning. She was still a photographer, still an adventurer, still the woman who chased impossible shots in impossible places. But now she was also becoming a mother. And maybe that didn't have to be a limitation. Maybe it could be the greatest adventure of all. You know what I want to photograph first? Emma said, looking at David across their breakfast table, seeing him in the soft morning light that had always been her favorite for portraits. What? You? Right now? In this moment when you're about to become a father, but you don't quite believe it yet. I want to capture that expression you get when you think I'm not looking, when you're trying to figure out how you got so lucky. David's cheeks flushed. You notice that? I notice everything about you, Emma said, already reaching for her camera. That's what happens when you love someone. You start seeing them in ways they don't even see themselves. As Emma lifted her camera and began shooting, she felt the familiar peace that came with doing what she was born to do. But this time it was different. This time she wasn't just documenting the world around her. She was documenting the world she was creating, one frame at a time. 5 years later, Emma sat in her favorite coffee shop in Cedar Falls, editing photos on her laptop, while her 4-year-old daughter Aurora colored quietly beside her. Through the window, she could see David leading a group of photography enthusiasts up the mountain trail, the same trail where he had first shown her the eagles all those years ago. The rusty spoon had evolved into something beyond David's wildest dreams. What had started as a simple cafe was now the heart of a thriving artist retreat. Writers, photographers, painters, and musicians came from around the world to spend weeks or months in the mountains, creating and learning and finding inspiration in the natural beauty that surrounded them. David ran photography workshops in the summer and fall, while Emma taught specialized courses in wildlife photography whenever she wasn't traveling for assignments. Mama, look, Aurora said, holding up her coloring book. She had drawn a family of eagles in careful, precise strokes that reminded Emma achingly of her own attention to detail. That's beautiful, sweetheart, Emma said, pulling Aurora onto her lap. Tell me about the eagles. The daddy eagle is teaching the baby eagle how to fly, Aurora explained seriously. Just like Daddy teaches people how to take pictures of birds. Emma smiled, marveling at how her daughter saw the world in terms of stories and connections. At 4 years old, Aurora already had David's gentle confidence and Emma's keen eye for detail. She spoke 3 languages because Emma had continued working internationally throughout her pregnancy and nursing years, bringing Aurora along on assignments whenever possible. Is this one of the photos from Patagonia? Aurora asked, pointing to Emma's laptop screen. Good eye, Emma said. This is a baby penguin I photographed last month while you were staying with Aunt Sarah. Emma's latest assignment had been a 3-week solo trip to document penguin colonies in Argentina. It was the first time she had been away from Aurora for more than a few days, and the separation had been harder than she expected. But it had also been necessary, both for her work and for her sense of self. She had learned that being a good mother didn't mean sacrificing every other part of her identity. I missed you, Aurora said simply. I missed you too, Emma replied, hugging her daughter closer. But you know what? Missing someone makes you realize how much you love them. Like when Daddy goes on teaching trips? Exactly like that. Emma's phone buzzed with a message from her editor at National Geographic. The Patagonia Penguin series had been approved for a cover story, and there was talk of it being nominated for a World Press Photo Award. Emma felt the familiar thrill of professional recognition, but it was tempered now with different priorities. Success still mattered to her, but not more than the life she had built. Mama, when is Daddy coming back? Aurora asked. Emma checked her watch. David's workshop would be ending soon, and then they would all have dinner together at the cafe before the evening's stargazing session. It was a routine they had developed that allowed them to share their work with others while still maintaining their family time. In about an hour, Emma said, do you want to go wait for him on the porch? They packed up their things and moved outside, where Aurora immediately began constructing an elaborate fairy house out of pine cones and wildflowers while Emma reviewed the photos she had taken that morning. Even in the familiar surroundings of Cedar Falls, she never stopped seeing new things through her lens. There he is, Aurora shouted, jumping up as David's group came into view on the trail. Emma watched her daughter run toward David, who immediately scooped her up and spun her around. The sight never got old. This man who had been willing to upend his entire life for love, now teaching others to see the world through the same eyes of wonder that had first drawn Emma to him. How did it go? Emma asked when David reached her, Aurora still chattering excitedly in his arms about her fairy house and her eagle drawings. Amazing, David said, his face glowing with the satisfaction that always followed his teaching sessions. We got some incredible shots of the golden eagle family. The mother has 2 juveniles now, and they're just starting to learn to hunt. The same family we saw on our first day together? Emma asked. I think so, David smiled. It's like they're our good luck charm. As the workshop participants dispersed to their cabins and goose houses, David, Emma, and Aurora settled in for their usual evening routine. They prepared dinner together in the cafe kitchen, Aurora standing on a step stool to help with simple tasks while David and Emma caught up on their respective days. I have news, Emma said as they sat down to eat. Good news or complicated news? David asked, using the distinction they had developed over the years. Good news, I think. The magazine wants to send me to the Galapagos Islands next spring. It's a major assignment, 6 weeks documenting how climate change is affecting wildlife there. David nodded thoughtfully. That sounds incredible. Are you excited about it? I am, Emma said. But it's 6 weeks. That's the longest I would be away from you. And, Aurora? What if we came with you? Aurora piped up. I want to see the big turtles. Emma and David exchanged glances. They had talked about this possibility, bringing Aurora on longer assignments now that she was old enough to enjoy them and young enough to be homeschooled on the road. It would mean closing the retreat for part of the spring season, Emma said carefully. Or it could mean expanding what we offer, David replied. What if we took a small group of photographers with us? A Galapagos expedition workshop? It could be the start of something bigger. Emma felt excitement building in her chest. You'd really want to do that? Emma, our whole relationship has been built on saying yes to adventures together. Why would we stop now? Because we have responsibilities now, Emma said. The retreat, Aurora's schooling, the life we've built here. All of which are portable, David pointed out. Aurora's already bilingual. She's learned more about different cultures from our travels than she would in any traditional school, and the retreat will be here when we get back. Maybe even better than before, because we'll have new experiences to share with future guests. Emma looked at their daughter, who was listening to this conversation with the intense concentration she applied to everything important. What do you think, Aurora? Would you want to go on a big adventure to see the islands where Charles Darwin discovered evolution? What's evolution? Aurora asked. It's how animals change over time to become better at surviving in their homes, David explained. Aurora considered this seriously, like how Mama learned to be a mama, even though she didn't know how before. Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. Exactly like that. Then, yes, Aurora said decisively. I want to see evolution. Later that evening, after Aurora had fallen asleep, Emma and David sat on their back porch looking up at the star-filled sky. The mountains rose around them like protective walls, and the sound of the creek running behind their property provided a gentle soundtrack to their conversation. Can I tell you something? Emma said. Always. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. 5 years ago, I was convinced that love meant giving up everything I cared about. I thought I had to choose between being a photographer and being a person someone could love. And now I realize that the right person doesn't ask you to choose. They help you become more of who you're meant to be. Emma turned to face David. You didn't just change my life. You helped me discover what my life could be. David reached for her hand. You did the same for me. I was so afraid of leaving Cedar Falls, of taking risks, of wanting more than what was safe and familiar. But loving you taught me that the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all. Do you ever miss it? The simplicity of before, Emma asked. David was quiet for a moment. I miss some things about it. I miss having you all to myself, before we had to share you with the rest of the world. I miss the days when our biggest decision was what to make for dinner. But I wouldn't trade what we have now for anything. Even when I'm gone for weeks at a time. Even when Aurora has a meltdown because she doesn't want to eat anything but peanut butter sandwiches. Even when the retreat is full of demanding artists who want you to solve all their creative problems. Especially then, David said firmly. Emma, easy isn't the same as good. Our life is complicated and messy and sometimes exhausting. It's also extraordinary. We've created something that neither of us could have built alone. Emma leaned against David's shoulder, feeling the deep contentment that had taken her years to recognize. She had spent so long equating happiness with independence that she hadn't realized how much more fulfilling life could be when shared with the right person. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," David replied. "And I love the life we've built together. All of it. The adventures, the quiet moments, the challenges, the victories. I love that Aurora will grow up thinking it's normal for parents to chase their dreams together instead of giving them up for each other." "What do you think she'll be when she grows up?" Emma asked. "Happy," David said without hesitation. "Whatever else she becomes, I think she'll be happy. Because she's learning that love doesn't limit you. It sets you free." Emma thought about their daughter, already showing signs of her mother's artistic eye and her father's generous heart. Aurora was growing up in a world where love meant adventure, where family meant supporting each other's dreams, where home wasn't a place, but a feeling of belonging wherever you were together. "The Galapagos trip," Emma said. "Let's do it. All of us. Let's show Aurora evolution in action. And let's show ourselves that we can keep evolving too," David added. As they sat together under the vast Montana sky, planning their next adventure while surrounded by the life they had built, Emma realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not a single perfect moment, but a series of imperfect, beautiful, challenging, extraordinary moments strung together by love and courage and the willingness to keep saying yes to whatever came next. Their love story hadn't ended with a wedding or even with the birth of their child. It continued every day, written in the choices they made to keep growing together, to keep exploring the world and each other, to keep believing that the best adventures were the ones they shared. And, in the distance, as if to bless their plans, a golden eagle called out across the mountains, its voice carrying on the wind like a promise of all the wonders still waiting to be discovered.